So anyway, let me introduce the piece. You're all here to see the thing, right? So, I'm Gerry Bassermann. I am a consultant for Dave Smith. There's like 12 people in the company. It's basically Dave. Imagine one person, and then with like elves. It's kind of really smart elves. But they're like, that's why the company moves fast. I think is because he's pretty in charge and decisions get made. You know, he's open-eared, but when it comes down to it, there's no delays because of that kind of apparatus. He met trolls from 8DO because they live in the same neighborhood up in Napa, like a grocery store romance or something. And Trolls was always trying to say we should do something together, and Dave just couldn't conceive of it because they sell to the film community, and the deep sampling thing that they do and keyboards, like somehow it's not in the same file folder in your mind, right? You think of these guys as being major computer, terabyte drives, picture, soundstage, and keyboards are on stage and in studios, but you just don't think of putting them together. So Dave didn't get it for a couple of years, and then Troll said, I think we should try it, because his claim was that film composers are kind of trapped by that workflow. I mean, there's a single workflow. It's not specifically in real time. It kind of is in real time, but it's one that's not as impulsive and real time as playing a keyboard. And he's right about that. And then the idea of getting the sound library through the analog filters is another enticing bit that Dave thought was really worthy. So that's what it is. It's a hybrid instrument. It's quite like a Prophet 12 layout. If you look at those 4 envelopes, 2 auxes, and then filter and amp. There's 4 LFOs. There's arpeggiator and sequencer. These are the Prophet 12 oscillators, digital oscillators, 10 octaves, updated to be better. I guess every time you implement the same oscillator, you can actually make it better. You can do different math. You can solve a problem you didn't solve before. And so these are an evolution of the Prophet 12 oscillators. And then here's your mixer where you get to mix them together. And that ends up being where you spend a lot of time because you're layering. You're thinking in layers, and you're thinking of what happens when you combine oscillators with. That's what a lot of these sounds I've already played are. They're combinations of the things. Or something might not appear to be there, and then it is there once you use a controller. So that's, you can ask questions anytime.
So the difference
nice. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to play these. They're on the Prophet 12 and the Pro 2. But, so you can go and play them rhythmically. Cool. Or you can massage them, or you can put it in latch. So it's like the kind of automation that never is abrupt. It's always, you can see where you are and you can move from there. So that all these programs that are in here, and you get, 512 in the factory banks, and then you get the same ones copied to the user banks, but that means you can write over or edit the user bank to your heart's content. That's 512. Then there's another bank that's mysteriously called A, which I didn't know for a long time what that was going to be, but that's for programs that use your sounds. So imagine these 8DO samples that are in here. We're going to go through a lot of them, but there's too many to even put a dent in it. There's 150 gigabytes, so 17 categories of sounds, full-on orchestra, full-on blues band guy sounds, full on strange dystopian abstract cinema sounds, lots of that. And there's a lot of these key maps that have a note on every 88 MIDI location, right? And so let me show you what that's about. That's really fun. Okay, I hit basic program. Now everything's sort of vanilla, and that's a sine wave. We just turn that down in the mixer. Now there's nothing, and there's these two lines meaning there's nothing. So right away, if you play the piano, yeah. So this is the 1928 Steinway. It says near. The next key map is near short. And you say, like, why would they put a specific short one in? And it's for layering. It's for like that D50 thing. It's like the LA synthesis thing. You can layer without having to use an envelope to specifically address. You can just get the attack going. So all these have either short or short plus extra short kind of lengths. But then now it's the player perspective. So the mics were here. Loop's not on. They don't loop this piano because pianos don't loop. That's a good t-shirt. They don't loop. I just thought of it. In fact, if I put on reverse, you can do this and listen how long they are. You have to wait a long time to hear it. Because they let it go down to minus 96 at least.
That's awesome.
If you want to make it more useful, you need to. The digital controls are on knobs too. Like, if you play with a sampler, it's mostly menu driven. And that's another reason Dave didn't want to do this project, because he thinks of sampling as you have to have these hierarchical menus that you dive in to get lost in and hurt your nose on the display. So he put them all here: start time, end time, size, and center. They will be reflected. Once I touch that, a screen comes up and shows me the value, but basically I'm turning a knob. Yeah, so now I don't want to turn the start because I've turned the sound around. I want to actually bring the end back. So if you wanted to use a reverse sound as...
But this is way
yeah, like something like that, or... Of course, then these are going to last longer than those and stuff. But anyway, now you see where part of why the 150 gigabytes became the 150 gigabytes, because there's no memory management or the stuff you think we used to do to suffer over the loop optimization and how much we could cram into a small amount. That's been gone a long time. But also, just to say, player perspective, player short, soft near, same piano, soft player. Here's the pedal on, where all the samples done, this huge sympathetic ringing harp, right? And that's with the near mics. Now, if you actually put the far mics on, now you have the sympathetic formant of the piano inside the whole room, right? And it's just more... So this same piano gets the deep sampling treatment from ATO. That's their passion. Anyway, it goes on and on. Soon, different pianos show up. And we move on to, cop shows. The short stuff is great for those cop show things, right? Huge, 20-foot Chrysler backing fast out of a driveway. And then there's upright. Anyway, suffice to say, lots of key maps. They're all velocity switching. Sweet. And it's not long before ATO decides what else they can play it, how else they can play it with a guitar pick, in this case. But So you could go to the guitar section or the ethnic section to get a dulcimer or a 12 string, but you could also come to the piano section and get this and start to modify it. You know, this is great for the filter, because, or even better if I just leave it. And then, of course, you can drive any of that stuff. So that's the pianos. There's 17 departments, as I say. We won't play them all, but they're so beautiful. Each of these, that's just the first of 97 string key maps, but it all has shape, right? It has this kind of beautiful swell and this thing. So every sample in here, I would say, has a performance aspect about it. They didn't ask anyone to just give it to me, you know, just the facts, man. Just straight on tone, don't do anything, right? Like a sampling session usually is. Don't move. But it's also like the Rev 2 that it has 2 layers per program, so they're completely separate. So you make up the 4 voices of layer A, and then you can make up layer B. It could be totally different, and you can switch between it with velocity or wheels. Okay. So it's easy in that sense to prepare, and they have a ton of pizzicato. And they have, this is chamber A, that's near mics. This is far mics. Chamber B would be like, I don't know the numbers, 2 cellos, 3 violas, 4 violins, right? Each one of these chambers is different. This is near. That's far. Listen to that difference. Enormous difference between the far mics. That's I've never heard that quite that way. Near. Yeah. Anyway, there's 96. The last one is like Colenio.
Oh.
Where they turn the bow over and start beating at it. Like, that's the reason you go to see the fill, right? Because they're going to do that, something like that. See, that stayed in. The little taking off there. That's in there.
Definitely adds the realism.
Yeah. This is ensemble pizzicato. They have very specific violins only. I mean, there's the Piccaro kitschy sound I played before has actually viola pizzicato in it. So anyway, there's a lot. Then there's this stuff. Then there's now we're in the 88 notes. This is like a directory of a thing called AWES. Landscape. A lot of times it has competing fundamentals, like little. So when you start to play, like with that last one, okay, let's put that last one that has all that on the whole keyboard by touching sample stretch while we hold it. Right, another one of those menu things that's right on the piano. So now I can play. They put a lot of abstract stuff like that. You just turn it off if you want to see what else is there. Oh, let's do that one. Now notice that of the multi-waves in the oscillator part, it's instead of triangle, they have sine wave. So, which is really nice because sine wave is the more invisible of the options, right? And it means actually that the instrument needs to be tuned, right? Because the oscillator's not wrong. But that's a cool sound too. That's a cool sound, like you want the character to take a left, not a right. Something bad in the right. So you could just go back here and say, yeah. Anyway, this the categories are winds. Winds, solo voice. Origin is the word. There's a zillion of them. Sanctus. You know, you can just isolate, you know, some part of that and loop it, etc. So there's solo voice, there's synth, which starts with all the VS wavetables. So from the Prophet VS, 88 of those, and right, and so you could do the same sample stretch thing and get that going. There is the department of noise. Not in the oscillator section where you might imagine, but so many kinds of noise, it's amazing. Air. Air, amp A, amp B, black noise, brown noise, discharge, electrical, EMI plate, organ fast with no tone, organ slow with no tone, fault, ground, pink, thermal, and white.
I don't think I've ever heard that much noise.
I know. There's a lot. I've never heard of some of them. Yeah. So that's the synth thing. The strings, I played a few. The piano, percussion tonal. Proponium. I never knew what that instrument was. I was thinking Greek until they told me, no, it's your propane tank, dude. You're just playing the propane tank with your fingers, as opposed to propane tank with the brushes, you know, drum brushes, as opposed to propane polyphon pad.
Somebody took my Johnson.
Music box, room mics, music box clean. That was nice. The other one was nice, huh? Now there's effects. You can choose to have. There's 4 reverbs up here, 2 delays, and a host of other things I'll go through. But in some cases they add with the mics, the room stuff. Metal bowl. So there's a lot of that. Marimba with brushes. It's a velocity switch. Bowed marimba. Yeah. Mallets, glockenspiel, you get all that stuff. And then percussion. Beautiful sounding, and then tons of kits as well. Then there's percussion, keyboard, lots of electric pianos, and plucked suitcase. How do you pluck an electric piano? Anybody know? I have no idea. I'm just reading. So a lot of those. Also the Wurlitzers, and then a ton of organ waves. There's a rotating speaker effect too. So if you like one of the sounds and it doesn't have the Leslie recorded, then you can just put it on and actually then control it, sync it with your BPM. So that rotating effect is nice. But anyway, that's the keyboard section. Then there's guitar, ethnic. There's all kinds of Santur. And a lot of other techniques to play, like the Kanun, especially for layers. Pizzicato, there's a lot in there. All of these, there's a lot. This is effects. So in effects, you get little. I forgot what that chord is. Tons of this. I mean, just key map after key map with everything's different.
Score film.
Yeah, it's instant. But the other thing that's interesting about these sounds is that Dave put the instruments, which is the samples, into the modulation matrix. So, you know, normally you go in there and you say, oh, I'll take oscillator 1 and modulate oscillator 2's frequency and do FM things and stuff. But now you can take one of these really rich, complex sounds. That could be a modulator, or it can be modulated similarly at the audio rate to get all kinds of effects. So, in fact, in one of my banks here, I did something. Where'd it go? Exorcismatic. Yeah. Where it goes wrong, right? It's an exorcist kind of thing. I did another one where I got a pretty good sound of trumpet that was clean, and then you get that sound where there's moisture spit, basically, in the mouthpiece. And it sounds distorted in a different way than every other instrument because it's literally the thing you're hearing. That worked pretty well. Then, I was telling you stuff like this before. This stuff is hidden. Sounds like a synth pad we could have done on here, right? So that's but if I turn the oscillators off, this is the one that has chamber violas doing their extra short near mic thing, and chamber violins doing pizzicato near. But it's hidden in the sound because it's super mid-range and it's not. It just pushes the sound attack. So totally don't notice it. It's sort of functional at some level. There's hidden message stuff. Dominus and Sanctus, it gives the sound motion and you don't really tune into it. Like something's happening, you kind of don't care what it is. It's subliminal motion of some kind. Just like flutes trilling, right? So that's in that effects section. I found that key map to be really useful. It's not so dramatic as the others, and it's really, and it's also recognizable kind of effect. Then there's just huge. Savior cometh, but they're actually saying Prophet X. That's the S's at the end. It's pretty funny. So yeah, does this? So it can make a lot of analog noise and be very ferocious or super delicate. It's I didn't know that one could get that nice. You get a lot out of one. That's just one. Most of these are one layer. They're not really even the two layer.
Go to the two.
That's some of that, bringing in the modulation from the samples, right? That's a little more controllable sounding than some of them are. But there's, this stuff I think I played right at the beginning. Then there's a lot of these kind of vibes. Because there's all these kits, and this is layered, split rather. Or with the bass. Yeah, so then to talk about the effects, since they're so obvious, it's dual effects. They're always in series. They always flow this way from effect 1 to 2, but they have the same menu of selections. So you can actually put them in any order, because you could put a reverb up top and then drive it through one of these things. So they're really flexible, and then you can invoke them with buttons, which is really nice because you can pop them in while you're playing. And you can sync all the parameters in the modulation matrix to be driven by something. And there's a sync button so that they relate to the BPM. So they're really useful in that way. I think if somebody's gonna produce your record and you have your basic sound, you might take them off and not print them, because there's probably better effects in whoever's machine you're getting mixed on. But if you have something time-wise going on that is part of the sound, then it's really nice. Yeah, and on that level of performance, there's a playlist function. This is kind of a new for DSI, where it's 10 sets. Each set has 16 patches.
Okay.
So it's sort of like, on the Rev 2, you have to choose them, with an encoder, with a rotary encoder, which is okay, but then you have to put them in order if you're going to perform or whatever. Then the Prophet 6 and OB6 have those Prophet 5 style, keys here, banks and keys. Very easy for performers. Okay. So this is like a halfway thing where these soft buttons underneath this display can call up instantly patches. And there's 4 of those per set, so there's 16 per set related to that idea. Obviously it has USB and MIDI for connection to DAWs or something like that. You can start the sequencer with audio like other DSI things, sustain pedal, CV and pedal here. And separate outputs. If you do have 2 layers in one program, you get separate outputs for the second layer, which is pretty useful. This is a kind of example of using the sequencer, which is 64 step, 6 notes per step. But you can do it like this, where you use the mixer to sort of bring in, like it's the beginning of a tune of your band or something, and it's an intro thing. So that's a really useful and clever use of the sequencer. You know, you have to. It's not a multi-track sequencer, a workstation style. It's a one that's on almost every one of the synths. I think all the synths have this style of step sequencer. The first preset that they wanted to put in the bass section was the acoustic bass, not quite an acoustic bass. It's called the bastard. Somebody invented it on an acoustic bass, and they play it with drum brushes. That's the number one bass sound. And then the next one is the buzz preset. That's the next important one to have. And then there's just grit. And then plucked, you know. And then, really interesting, play the bass with sticks. This is a bosinator, so again, in a custom instrument.
So that's 2 layers, right?
No, that's one key mat, yeah. Yeah, that's one key mat. It's not switching or anything, that's the instrument itself has drone stuff on it, you know. Somebody made a really good program of that too, called Auto Melodic. Check this out. They use lots of filtering and existing. Classic Prophet X. Little filter gets that thing to be less aggressive, you know. Effect 2's not on, and we could put it on the almost infinite reverb. What would that mean? signal in the super plate will reduce it or reveal it, but it's bringing up the low too now. So now we're only up in the. That would be a great intro thing, right? I'm reducing the tone to reveal more of what's there. I'm not using either of the filters. This is all within that reverb algorithm. Yeah, that's spooky. But that's a great preset, isn't it? Auto melodic. I'm using that Bassinator Arco and the bass tard with sticks. But anyway, eventually they do get to electric bass and the things you would imagine would be in a bass section, all kinds of interesting basses. And the Wurlitzer stuff has great basses, muted and just great tones.
Does it come with a software editor, or is it just everything just hardware?
So it's everything's hardware. For every other instrument DSI's done, there's been a desktop version. So I'm pretty confident to say there'll be a desktop version. It's just a problem when it has this many knobs and buttons to fit it on a normal sized desktop panel. Like with the Prophet 12, we had to use a shift key to accommodate some of those things.
Software.
Oh no, I mean
He's talking
like a
software.
Right. So I was going to say that's an additional thing that'll be there. Soundtower.com. That Soundtower people make all of our editor librarians. So then, if you hook that up through MIDI,
Is that third party?
yeah, you can put all these patches in there, and then reorganize them. You might want all same types of instruments together, and then use your playlist when you play. Excuse me. And then they have some programming features which are nice. You see all the parameters on the screen, right? And then they have some randomization in there. So you can do keep these kind of parameters the same, but scramble everything else and generate different kinds of programs. So there's that one.
That would be fun about the Prophet DS.
Yeah. And I love that constrained random stuff. Yeah. After a certain time at night, it's just sort of, you're not getting ahead on your program. You hit the random button.
It would come up with. I used to have a VS. It would come up with interesting combos.
Yeah.
There were some things that would be like, no, that's complete shit.
Yeah. It's your batch
Everything
processing
like, whoa, wait a
basically
minute.
by hitting.
I got something.
Again.
Let's tweak it a little.
It's like
and-
fishing. I thought there's something there. But then also 150 gigabytes of their stuff, but it's a 220 gig Samsung drive. So the extra 50 or so is for the user. So user samples. So this is this is an incredible, enormous set that is in there. But for 50 gig, you can fit a lot of your own sounds. And what we're going to do is the software that they have been using to prepare the sounds, change them to this format, and map them out and everything. Well, it's the one that they've been using, so it's not like public customer-facing software. It hasn't been tested or this or that. If you've ever been on a project with that kind of software, it's kind of a drag, right? Because it breaks and this and that. But so they're just going to fix that for the customers, and when that software is ready, then we're going to give that to everybody who has a PX, and then you can put your sounds in. You just load your WAV files in there, and that'll be copied. Actually, you see sample import here. It's a USB 3 thumb. It's for a thumb drive. So
Cool.
Take it out of your computer. You saved your work from that program there. Put it in here. It copies it to the hard drive, which is there. Shows up in this directory, however you've named it, and you're good to go. So that software is. Everyone will have access to that for free.
That's gonna be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And then also they'll put out sample packs. Like let's say you're a piano player, you want maybe more pianos, and so then they'll put out sample packs of pianos or synths.
For the keyboard.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that would fit into those 50 gigs too. sound good. Be delicate as a flower, or kitschy. Or didgeridoo. There's a lot of sounds. You can latch these down.